Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Danielle Fry, the Engagement Specialist for the IMPO. Welcome to the second event of our four-part speaker series this year. We partnered with APA Indiana for AICP credits. Those credits are not online yet. They should be online next week. If you registered and we have your email, I will be sending out an email once those credits are available for you to check for. If you missed our first event, our first topic was on housing. You can find a recording on our YouTube channel. This event is focused on traffic safety, in particular, technologies that can enhance traffic safety. Next up, on August 25th, we have micromobility, safety and policies, focusing on e-bikes, e-motos, all those little mobility devices that are out there now and policies that are being implemented for them. In November, we will discuss transit. So tonight, we have a panel of speakers for you. We have Tucker Bourne, John McGregor, and Blake Johnson. Tucker Bourne is the Traffic Signal Systems Engineer for Indianapolis DPW, a role he has held for 4 years. In that time, he has overseen capital improvements and managed the programming across the city's 1,200 traffic signals. Tucker has championed a shift towards intelligent signal systems to increase the safety, efficiency, and capacities of the city's traffic signals. John McGregor is the Director of Traffic Operations at INDOT. He is responsible for the Work Zone Safety Section, the Hoosier Helper Program, the Work Zone Speed Camera Program, and the Operations of Traffic Management Center. Blake Johnson is a State House Representative for District 100, and traffic safety is an important topic for him. He has spent the last few years working to pass a bill to allow for automated enforcement in school zones. We will have time for question and answers at the end, and welcome, Tucker.
Thank you, Danielle. So these other two panelists will be speaking more about automated enforcement in general, but I was asked to kind of highlight some of the technologies that we've been bringing into the city as far as our traffic signals are concerned. So there's kind of three main things I want to look at today, and that is going to be our video detection at signalized intersections, advanced traffic management systems, and some near-miss studies that we've been working towards. And so, as some of you may be aware, traditionally we have used loop-based detection in our traffic signals. They're just little metal inductive loops that are embedded into the pavement that let the signals know when and if there's vehicles presence. Unfortunately, those, at least for our agencies, are tougher to maintain. They can break when the pavement breaks, for example, and they're not everywhere. So video detection really has come a long ways in the past several decades, and now we use them to provide sort of vehicle detection for the entire intersection. But they don't just work for vehicles, they work for pedestrians, bikes, buses, everyone else that uses the intersection. The advantage of these is that they're roughly the same cost as standard loops, if not even better at the larger intersections, and they provide that detection for the entire intersection, not just the limited scopes of the loops. They also can provide us some real-time information feedback to us. So I can pull up this image here and see how the traffic operations are behaving at that moment in time. It's not a CCTV camera, so I don't have that great of detail or anything like that, but it is a good snapshot in time, if you will. This here is at Maryland West Street that we just added thanks to our friends over at Indigo. But like I said, the video detection uses machine learning to detect all the users. We can provide detection for the entire intersection. It classifies everyone's into groups and counts them so we know exactly how many users are through the intersection every single hour, every single day. It is much simpler for our maintenance staff to maintain. It's only one wire, 1 to 2 cameras, and a computer at the signal. And we get a ton of other metrics and reporting information from them as well. They still sort of struggle in adverse weathers, but I mean, in the past snowstorm that we saw this winter, I was watching them and we were still getting fairly good information back, but it's not going to be, that 100% accuracy that you see with loops. But that's kind of like a risk that we take in order to have a much larger data set. I want to hit a little bit more on go specifically into what some of our video cameras can do. For example, I mentioned that it can count volumes through an intersection. Here's an example of 1 day's worth of volume traffic through an intersection at White River Parkway and Michigan Street during the Indianapolis 500 this past year. As you can see, it breaks it down in total and per hour and per movement and per classification of user as well. On that Sunday, we saw 17,000 vehicles, and I love to point this out, 3,500 bikes went through that intersection as well. In 1 hour on that Sunday, we saw 814 bikes go through that intersection. I believe there was a bike party to the race, and that was probably what that was. So volume counts. Also a little bit more important to this for today's session is that it can do red light running. Now, this is not enforcement. I want to be clear. It is not picking up license plates and tagging it to specific users. It is just indicating every single time that a vehicle ran a red light. What I have up on the screen here is an example at Allisonville and Kessler from 1 day's worth of traffic. Each graph is an approach, so starting with the southbound, northbound, and so on. And each dot you see there is an occurrence of what it classifies as red light running. Now, it puts a dot every time that a vehicle passes the stop bar once the light turns yellow. And per state law, that you're not running the red light until after you pass the stop bar after the light has turned red. So really, if you want to see all the infractions, you should look for that red line there. Everyone above that ran the red light on Allisonville going southbound. Still a lot of red light runnings, but as far as traffic engineering goes, it does give us some useful information on how we should program the signal. I like to point out this westbound over here. You can see how in the AM and PM peaks of that signal, there's a lot more people running the light. So that's a pretty good indication that we should add some split time to that signal. I don't have a before and after, but if I did capture that after, we would hopefully see that sort of shorten up a little bit, see less instances of that. Something else you can do with these cameras, and I don't have an example of it, is that, all that video that was that I showed you earlier can be recalled up to a couple of days. But if I wanted to go look at who ran the red light here, we can pull up the information and pull a screenshot of it. In fact, I have another camera at Capitol in Maryland where it captured someone going the wrong way on Capitol, so they're going northbound, and it pinned it at 52 miles per hour. So there's an example here, and I'll play the video, of someone going northbound on Capitol at 52 miles per hour. This did happen overnight. I think it was 6 a.m. But being able to receive that notification helps us kind of identify which of our intersections are seeing the worst types of behavior, right? And so I don't know if there's much I can do about this vehicle going 52 miles per hour the wrong way up Capitol. I can let my friends know at INPD, and hopefully they can try to do a targeted enforcement. But if I saw that happening consistently there, then we know that something's wrong with the road. Maybe they're all turning out the parking garage the wrong direction, and that's something that we can work to try to fix. Moving on, we have rolled out an advanced traffic management system, otherwise known as an ATMS software. INDOT has a super good one of this, and I would encourage you to go watch one of their presentations. I saw one at Road School last year, I think. It was great. But we have one, we rolled it out to about 160 signals so far. It is all cellular based, and this allows us to see the status of our traffic signals. So we can get alerting for like when the signal's on flash, signal performance measures similar to what I was showing earlier, remote communication and scheduling and event management. Those last two I'll talk about a little here. I'm the only traffic signal engineer with Indianapolis DPW. It's, as mentioned earlier, there's 1,200 signals is a lot to look at. So instead of having to go out to each signal and mess around with the timings in the box itself, I'm able to do that from my desk. Huge time saver. I can look at multiple things at once, troubleshoot early rather than going out in the field. You can't beat going out in the field and seeing how traffic actually behaves, but it is a huge time saver. And scheduling and event management, we haven't explored this fully, but I would love to look at this more in depth with some of the events that we host around the city, say after a Colts game or when the State House garages get released. We can use these systems to kind of evaluate and then predict and then implement new timing plans that would help that traffic more. Here's a screen of alerting. Typically, when a signal goes onto like a red flash, you're supposed to call the mayor's action center, and then they call our operations staff, and then they go out and reset the signal. These can be set up, go directly to our operations staff, and they can address that immediately. So that is also a huge time saver, and it's also a safety thing because all red flash, as we know, can be dangerous at times, especially when there's a lot of traffic going on at some point in time. And then a graph of one of our signal performance measures that I pulled out because I thought this one was interesting. We have a camera set up at 82nd and Center Run. That's up in Castleton, just outside the mall entrance. There's a lot of construction going on up there, as we know. But also, it's a old road network, and we haven't adjusted those signal times in a while. And I love being able to pull this out and seeing that our split failure here is huge in the afternoon rush hour. Another indication that we should go out there and gather new information and retime our signals and hopefully make the whole corridor work better together. But as you know, if you are stuck in the cycle, or you're stuck at a signal there for 4 cycles in a row, never being able to get served because either the intersection's blocked or because there's so much traffic in front of you, it keeps increasing that aggression and that frustration that you have behind the wheel. But being able to pull out these graphs and this information is a very good way to kind of specify where our highlighted hotspots are and be able to target them specifically. And then the last thing I was going to address today is our near-miss studies. So each of our cameras have the ability to, it's an extra cost, and I'll get to that, but each of our cameras providers have an ability to conduct a near-miss study. And what that does is that it, over a long period of time, say about 60 hours or so, it takes a look and analyzes all the vehicles going through the intersection or the conflict point or wherever we have it pointed at and classifies them into these risk factors. So the graph that you're looking at here was when we were at, I believe, yeah, that was 38th Street and Michigan Road. And for each of the potential conflicts, say it's a through vehicle compared to a left turn, it plots the two of them, plots their speed, and calculates the time between collision. So if a vehicle comes through here and then 3 seconds later a left turn crosses that same path, it plots it and puts it on this graph over here, and then using their properties assigns it a risk assessment. We've done a handful of these. I know Indigo has been looking into doing a ton more up and down Capitol Avenue on the near north side. And I really look forward to being able to compare those before and afters information of before we take the study, and then we do some sort of implementation down the road, and then see, and hopefully, that we improve the road with this. And now, I do want to point out that this specific study, and a lot of them, can be done with our mobile data collection units. Like these, you may have seen them up at College and Mass Ave here, or here's an example outside at 38th and Michigan Road again. These allow us to not even look at signalized intersections, but look at unsignalized intersections as well, or pick up vehicle speeds and volumes and classifications, again, down just a random stretch of road or anything like that. I think that's all I'm going to address now. I would take questions when we do our panel. I'm going to pass it on.
So good afternoon. I will mention that one of my jobs along the way at INDOT was working in the signal systems engineering group. You said you had what, about 1,200?
Yeah, we got 1,200.
Yeah, we've got about 2,500 statewide, 6 of us plus a supervisor. This man does not have an easy job. He really doesn't. So again, I'm John McGregor. I refer to myself in the context of the automated enforcement program as the lowest person in the chain of command that does other things. As was mentioned, you know, I've got other programs, but I've been in this one pretty much since we passed the legislation. So to that point, HEA 1015 was passed effective July 1, 2023. It was a 5-year pilot program. That means right now we're over halfway through the program. We've had effectively 2 years of real work. When the legislation passed, we had to build a program, plan it out. We had hired a consultant to help us programmatically build it. We hired a vendor. And by August of 2024, we were out there testing. And frankly, you know, with what it takes to procure and build a program like that, that's breakneck speed for Indiana, so I'm very proud of that. Program goals: slow vehicles down, save the lives of motorists and workers, and reduce crashes. Speed, of course, is a predictor for bad outcomes, so we're investing in slowing people down. One of the talking points that is worth mentioning is we're not in this for the money. I'm not the best at slide management, it's probably going to say it later, but the money from this program does go to the general fund. It does not go to INDOT or the state police. This comes out of other programs that we might have at INDOT, so really we are investing in safety. A little bit about the history of the program. It is similar to Pennsylvania's and Maryland's. I like to refer to us as Pennsylvania's grandchild, Maryland's kid, that we modeled our legislation after those programs. Pretty good because we hired a Pennsylvania consultant that works in their program to help us build ours. Let's see what else. A good talking point is, you know, every one of these programs in the country are a little bit different. Because the legislation's different, right? We've got to, you know, handle it with different laws and rules. And one of the uncommon but not unique things in Indiana is we are administering this program without the help of the Indiana State Police. That means the thumbs up, thumbs down is handled internally without a licensed officer looking at it. New York does the same, I'll mention. But that means that we're in the business of affirming with affidavits that, you know, this is correct. It is a little bit more judicious to handle it this way. Program elements, we're allowed 4 systems. I think the intention was to have 4 systems, but it was actually written 4 locations a calendar year, so we're adhering to that, to the legislation. We're going to 4 work sites each year. The violations occur at 11 miles or more over. So if the work zone speed is 45, obviously 55, you're going to be okay. 56 and above, that's where the problems begin. You have to have the signs. It says signs notifying and workers present for it to be valid. And that's part of the deployment log in the evidence packet when there is adjudication, that we affirm that, you know, signing was there. We get pictures of what was there each day for each deployment, and we affirm workers are present. The structure is, first event is a warning, $75 for the second. Third thereafter is $150. So when I mentioned going active in August of 2024, that was a pre-enforcement period. May 5th, we got the thumbs up to actually begin this fine structure, May 5th of 2025. And as I'm going to show you, I think it's been quite effective. Again, there it is. I get ahead of my slides, but as I mentioned, the funding itself does not go to INDOT or ISP. This is not a money grab for us. One of the requirements is annual reporting. We do it by fiscal year with the legislation, so we've got 2 reports on our website, safezonesin.com. If anybody cares to look it up, you can see the progress we've made going to share a little of that with you here as well as some Purdue research. So the experience for let's call it customer, the experience for the customer, first thing they see, hopefully a lot of you have seen it, ClearPath or some of the more remote projects, some form of a sign. We're giving a notice and the maximum penalty, $150. Again, the legislation says signs. That means 2, so that's a minimum. We go overboard, but minimum of 2 signs. We're not playing a game. We are putting out an active sign when we're active. That is not required by legislation, but as I mentioned, we're trying to buy safety. We're not interested in revenue. So the active sign is put out in a stand, pretty close proximity to the vehicle. So that's another element that people see. Then you see a truck. It's about as devious as we get. You know, it is a white work truck. There's a lot of those out there, we know, but you know, that could be the one. So these are not, you know, I'll mention Facebook and Nextdoor is fun to watch. A lot of people think that our cameras that we have are places that we're using supervision for this. No, it's out of a work truck. It is manned. We're not set it and forget it. It is manned with a technician, and we've got INDOT operators in the game as well. This just gives some indication of what the experience is sitting there on the side of the road, you know, looking at the speeds that we have. The next step of the process, some of our customers get a little piece of paper, right? It shows the vehicle, you know. Indiana, we're not allowed to take a picture of the front of the vehicle. We do not want to get a picture of the driver. You know, privacy concerns reign supreme. Again, legislation is different. Other states require it. So we've got to work with that. Then the customer, you know, might have to go to a website and pay a little bit, right? They do have the opportunity to appeal. Another talking point that I didn't put in the slides is this is a civil penalty. We are not affecting points in the license, but with a fine structure of, you know, 75 and moving to 150, for most of us that becomes real money if you're a repeat customer. So some of the summaries through, and I apologize, I've got old man's eyes, so I've got to turn around and read this. There it is. So through 2025, we had almost 1 million events, right? 823,000. And for that year, when I ran this query, we had resolved most of them. We just had a few in process at this point. Another number that's worth looking at there is the rejects. Our vendor is called Elevate. This is a custom form. We're police rejects. But out of those, a big chunk of them we're setting aside, right? And that doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. We're using LiDAR technology that's about the best. It's pretty much irrefutable. But it shows that we're aligning with the business rules. We are not writing any kind of paper on people that we believe that there's a chance that we cannot prevail if they choose to adjudicate. The metric that we're managing to is no false positives. Mail summary, again, for that same time period, we'd mailed almost 250,000 first notices, nearly 20,000 second. That's where you get into $75. And third is a little further over, almost 10. That's a good thing to look at. So out of the first notices, people get the notice, and I'm assuming that means they're changing the behavior, right? Because they get that, they know they're in the game. After that, it falls off quick. But it's interesting, out of the second notices, almost 20,000, you have almost 10,000 third. So the people that are going to get that second notice, there's a good chance they'll get a third. But the lion's share of people are being notified, and they're modifying the behavior. That's what we want. My friends at Purdue, the Joint Transportation Research Program, have looked at this and vetted what I'm going to share with you, which I think is pretty exciting. So this slide here, this is looking at the different locations at different times, and this is just an example. I'll point to the numbers there on the far right. We're looking at numbers like 84, 77, you see 100%. These are people that we are taking out of the enforceable zone into the unenforceable. So we're looking at the volume before and volume after. And in some cases, we're having 100% reduction at the point of enforcement of the people that we could have enforced on if we've been enforcing before. So it's a before and after study. That's only at the point of the vehicle. And this is a snapshot in time, but it's showing some great results. Let's see here. As I mentioned there, that speaks to those points. I apologize, I got it in front of my slides. This is another way to look at it. So again, the lines you're looking at in the top, speed at the first sign, speed at the second, speed at the third. And when I say speed, we're looking at the percentage of the volume of people that are in excess and enforceable at. So when you pass the first sign, 90% of the people we would have been able to enforce on. Second sign, you're down there around 65, 70, give or take. Third, it falls off right at the vehicle. We're bringing them into compliance at the vehicle. That's pretty exciting. Another way to look at it, these are just slivers. Green are people that are actually driving within the speed limit. The yellow are inside the 11 or over. You get into the orange and the red, those are people that are enforceable. And as you move through, so the direction of travel, left to right, see those arrows pointing down? You're passing the first sign, the second, you see that black dotted line? That's at the enforcement vehicle. So at that point, the people that are speeding, that volume reduces to a very low volume. Again, it's showing the results. We like it, it's a good graphic. There's a lot of information there, and as an engineer, I can go overboard on that. But here's another one. This one is on the Indiana Toll Road. Toll Road asked us to go up there. We worked out a deal to do it. If you think red is bad, purple is horrible, because what are you seeing there? You're seeing 31 to 40 miles an hour over the speed limit. Highly effective at bringing them down. And you see what's going on. They're speeding. They get into the work zone. They see the signs. They slow down. They get beyond the work zone. They're back to making up time. That's the sad truth of it. That's the reality of it. But again, where we deploy them, we're proving high effectiveness. This is an interesting slide. So again, this shows day by day, again, that same first sign, second sign, third. What we're seeing, though, if you look at the colors of the vertical lines, that's when we were out there. But the white lines, we weren't. But we're still, just with putting up the signing notifying that it's a speed enforcement zone, forget the active, just that we've got a zone that's present, people are falling into compliance. It sure helps putting the vehicle out there, because there's an incremental, but we're getting some of the halo effect that we want people in that zone, irrespective of whether we're there or not, to slow down. And it does show that it's working. Another way of looking at it, speeds over the work side, speeds within the tolerance. Again, it's showing the effectiveness there that we're bringing them down. This is kind of a flip of it. This is showing the overall compliance. This one is throughout the work site as well. One of the big talking points, if you remember nothing else, I want you to remember these numbers. So I've talked about numbers like 100%, 70% and whatnot, but 34 and 41%, that's the deliverable all the way through the work zone. People are smart. They figure out where the enforcement vehicle is, at least a lot of them. But this is not just looking at the point of the vehicle, but all the way through the work zone. And we're getting passenger cars reduced 34%. Again, not just the vehicle all the way through. 41% for commercial trucks. And that's amazing. So we're bringing trucks into compliance more than even passenger cars. I'm really proud of that. As a work zone engineer that's dealt with commercial fatalities in work zone, I will tell you that 8 out of 10 crashes involve a commercial truck. Fatal crashes involve a commercial truck. So bringing those people into compliance is a big payoff, right? So excited about that. And again, poor slide management on my point, but that hits the talking points that I wanted to talk about. So we are active now. As I mentioned, that safezonesin.com website, you can find out where we are. This isn't a game for us, and it'll show you the sites that we're on. We're on 65 up north near Rensselaer. We're still in Clear Path. We're on I-70 out east near Greenfield, and we're on I-74, combination of, the Shelbyville to Greensburg area. So that's where we're at this year. Tell your friends. But we would appreciate it if you slowed down. With that, I'll hand it on. Oops. Sure.
I'm going to take the check. Well, first of all, as a politician and the only one on the panel, I'm going to speak for about 50 minutes. So I hope you guys are buckled up and ready to go. Listen, as a policy nerd, which is why I ran for office in the first place, it's like being on a panel with George Clooney and Brad Pitt today. So I apologize that I'm not going to have any slides and I'm not going to be nearly as interesting. But I'll tell you, this whole issue around traffic safety, pedestrian safety, use of technology is driven for me by a couple of things. First is just out of a policy interest, right? When we have problems that need solving, policy should be additive in getting us to those solutions. Second, I'm a dad. I've got a 2.5 and a 1-year-old. And I don't know if anyone's got young kids right now, but my 2.5-year-old has a balance bike. And he can go very fast on his balance bike. And I am now even more alert to how traffic moves, either poorly or well, as we're walking down College Avenue or Fletcher Avenue, and I'm trying to wrangle him from going into traffic. But the third thing is a couple of stats that I think are instructive. In 2024, 230 Hoosiers died due to an incident that was the result of speeding or distracted driving. 230. That's 230 kids, 230 grandmas, 230 moms, dads, brothers, families that were completely disrupted and destroyed because of speeding and distracted driving. That is a result of 17,000 crashes in 2024 in Indiana as a result of those two things. It's interesting to me because we know this is a significant problem. But from a policy standpoint, we are still limited. Towns, cities, counties are limited in what they can do. The work that's happening in the Safe Zone thing is incredible, but it's a pilot, and it's very narrow. I was involved in the legislation. I voted for the legislation, was on the Roads and Transportation Committee, and we had to keep making it more and more narrow to get it passed. So what I've introduced over the last 5 years as a legislator, which means I've got a great track record of introducing it, is to apply these same principles, and now it's almost my latest bill is actually just a direct mirroring of the pilot that we've got in work zones and putting it on school zones. Because my belief is if it's good enough for our workers, which are valuable parts of our society, I think it's good enough for an elementary school kid trying to get from across one side of the street. So I have introduced this bill. There's actually quite a bit of support, and we continue to kind of work at a way to get this there, and all the results that we continue to get from this program, I think, continue to inform a possibility that we could, in fact, get there. And the idea is pretty simple. Similar idea, signs, a camera catching folks driving. I represent District 100, which is downtown to 465 on the east side. I've got the entirety of Washington Street. And if you stand, I bet you remember the old Blackacre days. If anybody's ever been to Blackacre, it's now gone. But you sit in Blackacre and you could watch cars fly by at 55, 60 miles an hour through a commercial corridor that's actually pretty narrow. The engineering is already designed to slow down traffic. It didn't matter. On Washington, there's like 5 school zones in my district, just from west to east. We could dramatically slow down rates of travel. And if we extended some of these school zones to 2-mile stretches between schools, you're talking about transformative, life-saving move on a corridor that has a lot of traffic, a lot of speed, and a lot of incidents. Similar, no criminal penalty, civil. We've designed it to be no insurance implications, no BMV points, all of that. It is simply a civil infraction to try and slow folks down. And similarly, any revenue would go towards maintenance of the system and not towards any sort of other, it's not a revenue generator. It's literally just maintenance of the system we've got in place to try to slow folks down. So I'll introduce it again in 2027. I'm unopposed in the election, so I'll be back, I think. You really have to mess up to lose when you're by yourself. But we'll introduce it again in the 2027 session. And to be honest with you, it's the number one thing. I mean, I work a lot in pre-K, but this is going to be the thing. My next term is about getting this done. And I think the more data we get, the more we can have honest conversations. The privacy thing is what keeps coming up. But because it's a civil penalty, no insurance, you're tracked more by your phone. Just watch, spandex. Tonight, everyone's going to have spandex ads just because I said it 3 times and your phone heard it. Okay? So, that level of tracking is what, folks should be concerned about. Catching you doing something that may kill somebody, I'm not worried about your privacy. You should not be speeding through a school zone. The last thing I'll say is, as I've been working on this issue in my district, many of you probably remember the story, Hannah Crutchfield, a 7-year-old little girl that was killed in a school zone, crossing the street. Her mother was severely injured. The crossing guard was severely injured, and it was a result of reckless driving. And I'll tell you what, 230 is a big number, but if I can save one kid, this is worth every ounce of political capital I can burn to get it done. So I'm happy to answer some questions tonight with my friends here, and I hope you'll help me make the case, in addition to the credits you're getting tonight, and you're here because, like us, you're a nerd on transportation. I hope you'll help me get this done, because this is something that'll save a lot of lives over the course of the next several years. So thank you.
All right, we have entered our question and answer portion of the evening. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of start thinking about your questions, and I'll start us off here. This is kind of for anyone, all of you. Besides the initiatives that you are currently working on, are there other promising technologies in relation to traffic safety that you're looking into?
So is this working? Okay. In work zone safety, there are a lot of technologies. We've got the, blanking on it now, but we've got an exchange where we're using smart devices in work zones to share it with our ATMS and pushing it out there to Google and other platforms to get information in the hands of the motorist, right? So we're talking about, smart arrow boards, smart message boards, the digital signs. Some of those can be equipped to get traffic speeds as well. But the big thing is if we've got an important message, if we've got a merge ahead or a work zone ahead, pushing that information out there. Stellantis and other vehicles have it to receive that information in the car. That kind of technology is the way of the future. So getting people's attention. Look at me, I've got 2 cell phones. One's a state cell phone, one's my own personal.
Spandex.
But, the point is we've got a lot of distractions. And if you get that information right into the car using the smart technology in the work zone, all the better.
To continue and add on to that, I think connected vehicles is probably one of those next bits of technology in our traffic safety world. Not so much as like you enter into a geofence zone and suddenly your car it doesn't have control, but more of like you enter into a geofence zone of you're in a work zone, or we have pedestrians crossing at this intersection. You'll get the alert on your dashboard or on your Google Maps or Waze, whatever you're using, whatever we end up working with, to alert you to sort of those hazards or other conditions of the roadway. But honestly, from my side of the room, looking at traffic signals in the urban context, a lot of our older technology is the way for traffic safety. Things as simple as protected left turns or maintain traffic signals to achieve appropriate flow and speeds. It's not as complex as what you might think sometimes. If there was one technology, I think I would agree it would be connected vehicles or something akin to that. But
yeah, I think this intelligent speed assistance thing is a fascinating thing in how we think about the way the vehicles interact with infrastructure. I know there's some communities, right, where the cars are interacting even with the crosswalks. So if a pedestrian comes out, the car knows pedestrian's coming out and you're kind of alerted. That stuff's fascinating to me. But I think alert systems on the dash, which I drive a minivan because I'm cool like that now with 2 kids. And my minivan now will, hey, you're speeding. It never says that because obviously I'm not a guy that speeds. But it gives me alerts about school zones now, crosswalks. That's a pretty extraordinary thing. And in Europe, it's actually required of every new vehicle that's manufactured to have that technology. So the U.S. could obviously take steps to get us there, too.
Do we have any audience questions yet?
Hello. I just had a question about the no BMV points or anything that would impact somebody's. Is this coming through? Somebody's insurance wouldn't be affected by negligent driving. What is the reasoning for that? Or if you have a lot of people who, I know in some of the fatal crash review reports, certain drivers have had multiple DUIs, multiple speeding infractions, or they've had their license revoked. Just some of the reasoning behind why you wouldn't try to target that.
The honest to God truth is it's a maneuver to try to get past. So we've had to reduce elements of the bill to make it more palatable to more folks within the chamber to try to get the bill to hearing and to vote. So that's why it's civil. That's why there are no points, no insurance. It's literally because there's a plurality of members of the House of Representatives and the Senate that we need to keep trying to find ways to get this done. It's also, why there's, on the safe zone side, which again, I'm a huge supporter of, voted for, supported, was at the bill signing, right? It's why there's notification, first infraction, second infraction. These are all steps to try to get the coalition we need to pass legislation like that. And so I think, that's the honest, that's not the politician answer, it's the honest answer, that's where we're at.
I had a question about the safe zone as well. You had mentioned that I don't remember the number, but there are so many set aside infractions, I guess, that were set aside. Who decides that they get set aside, and why do you set them aside? I didn't quite follow that.
So it's a multi-tier. So our vendor that we hired to go out and take the pictures and find the vehicles, that's a big part of it. So I think we're like at $500,000 or close to $500,000, 475 of those, 822. Some of it's set aside because we can't identify the vehicle owner. That's the hardest part because we don't have a pipeline right into the BMV, so we have to go third party and other things. But if we don't have a really good picture, if there's any aspect of it that doesn't, support adjudication, we're not issuing it. So, we make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So we're talking about the signs being in place. We're talking about, clearly we can affirm that workers are present. That's a no-brainer before setup. But largely it's about identifying the motorist, making sure the picture is clear. And when I say the motorist, we're fundamentally looking for the vehicle owner. That's what we're looking up. Making sure it's clear, making sure there's nothing that's indefensible that we can fully defend if it goes forward. The mantra has been no false positives, but in essence, we don't want to do anything that will diminish this program. That's the real marching order.
Hi, you mentioned intelligent speed assistance. There actually was a bill last legislation. It was introduced but didn't, and had a hearing scheduled but did not get voted on in committee. That would allow, if someone is super speeders, to be required to have an ISA device installed in their vehicle so that they couldn't speed. And there are several other states that have already passed this legislation. Virginia, Illinois just signed it. And so there's a push at the national level to get that type of legislation at the state level. And it looks like there might be that same bill, this next legislation.
I'm looking this up right now to see who carried it. So if I could have 3 minutes,
It was Senator
I'll
Crider.
out of order answer or comment on what you've stated.
Well, this is not going to help if you're Googling while I ask you a question, but the fatal crashes in Indianapolis that the public has cared the most about have nearly all been red light running crashes. So could you comment on if there's any energy toward pursuing automated enforcement for red light running? And 2, can Tucker provide any data to help convince you?
Yes, I could provide data to help support the case. Each of our video detection cameras that I pointed out has the capability of pulling up red light running information. We can even pull up specific images of people running red lights and seeing the egregiousness or lack thereof of each incident. We can pull up raw numbers at each of our 60 or so signals that have these cameras and expanding. Do you want it back now? Yeah.
I think unfortunately right now, we're climbing up a pretty strong hill here around application in very narrow circumstances. So I think there's probably not a whole lot of appetite at this moment. And I think that's why we've got to continue building the case, like more and more data, more and more results. But I point to, New York has school zone safety and automated enforcement, reduced speeding by 73% in those areas. There's portions in the New York Department of Transportation that this kind of technology has wiped out speeding entirely, which we had a couple examples of that in your work as well. So, government is so incredibly slow, and sometimes that's really, really great, sometimes it's not. But our job as policymakers is to try to, get through as much of this data as possible and make a strong case for why a new policy solution should be in place. And I think use of this technology is essentially giving our law enforcement, our departments of public works, superpowers to try and make our streets safer. So it's incremental, and the first step for me is, can we make this application beyond just work zones to another sort of narrow area that could further make the case that this is the right kind of technology, that it's responsible technology that results in fewer accidents, fewer deaths, fewer serious injuries.
So my question, there's so many intersections in the city and in the state. How do you make that initial decision to put a near-miss box or those cameras? How much of it's political? How much of it's data? What data are you using?
Sure. At this point in time, I think we're looking at leverage, if I'm being honest. Where do we have a capital project already programmed or near programmed or eyeing on it for a different reason, right? Some of it is philanthropical. So like the 38th Street example, CICF gave us a donation to do that information, that study. They actually bought our first equipment for that in our first studies for that corridor. Afterwards, it would be rather data-driven, right? Where are high injury networks? Where is the need the highest at, based off of the number of incidents? Really that, and how can we leverage our dollars most effectively from there?
Question for John: Does the system pay for itself?
No. There is revenue, right? But again, it goes to the general fund. So I say no. We are getting revenue. It's not matching what we're predicting the cost to be, but it does not go to INDOT. It doesn't go to the state police. So, it goes to the general fund, and we have our own funding, right? But I can tell you, the last time I looked at it, more money out than in. So that's where we're at right now.
I'm just coming back to you. Pulled this up finally. So this was actually introduced by the Republican chair of the Transportation Committee, but it went to, looks like Homeland Security, Senate Homeland Security and Transportation. So I'd say that's actually got quite a bit of possibility when the chairman is the one introducing it and then choosing not to hear it in his own committee. I suspect that means he's got some plan to keep it moving over the course of the next several sessions. So I hadn't seen that bill because it never made it to the House, and quite frankly, if it doesn't make it to the House, I miss it for staying married and not spending all my time looking at bills. But that seems to have some promise, I'd imagine.
Follow-up question, if you can share, John, beyond the end of this pilot program, is there any indication about how it might be expanded or if it will be expanded, to your knowledge?
That is a legislative policy question, and I'm here as a technical expert.
That's a great answer.
I will personally say I hope it continues. I hope it goes into a permanent program because it is effective.
And I'll just say, it's politics, right? So can you imagine us taking it away after it's reduced speeding that dramatically? I mean, I think that's the beauty of a pilot program like this, is it starts saving lives and making things safer. It'd be very unpopular for any politician that knows anything about anything to take away a program like that that's doing extraordinary work.
And
not impossible, but still, yeah.
Clarification on the upcoming legislation that you're going to introduce. This will allow a local jurisdiction to implement a program if they choose, and they would administer it on their own as well?
Yeah. So it would essentially take their handcuffs off and their ability to utilize the technology in this kind of narrow scope of school zones.
And then each jurisdiction would, I don't want to say reinvent the wheel on how to do it, but INDOT has figured this out, right? Is there assistance from INDOT in the implementation, or would INDOT be involved at all? Has that been
Yeah, I mean, I think that the legislation is currently silent on that, but now that we're getting more data, I suspect that we would at least encourage in practice, maybe not in code. But also, I mean, there are quite a few vendors out that are doing this work around the country. I mean, this is happening, and most of our neighboring states actually allow for some degree of automated enforcement. So the playbook has been written in how to do it well, and the mistakes have been made in other places too. So between INDOT, between what we see out in the field of how this works, I've got some confidence that local municipalities and jurisdictions could handle it.
I'm going to sneak another question in before we go to another audience question, if you don't mind. On that note, are there good examples of some of these things that we've talked about today in other areas of Indiana or neighboring states that are doing some of this work and really like seeing a difference that you know of?
Maybe I'll start to answer that. So Illinois does have an automated enforcement work zone program. It is functionally much smaller than ours. They are not capturing the volume. It is implemented differently. They have different rules. And Kentucky is pursuing one as well. Pennsylvania, Maryland, they've been doing it for years, and they're highly effective. Another up-and-comer is Washington. That is just in the automated enforcement. Speed light running, that it's not something I've done a lot with, but maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, I would add Michigan, because there was a piece of legislation signed in 2024, December 2024, and I think it's in the 2026 construction season that they've actually got some degree of this happening now. They've also got school bus stop arm camera laws. We have now allowed for cameras on the stop arms as a method to collect evidence, but it's not an automated enforcement. So I like Michigan a lot for a lot of reasons, but they've definitely got some work happening this way. And I think Ohio actually is really moving the needle too in terms of their sort of smart mobility efforts, and I think it's like Drive Ohio maybe is what it's called, but they're doing some pretty great work. And what's interesting is these are, from a partisan standpoint, Ohio is under the control of Republicans, Michigan's under control of Democrats. Like this is a bipartisan things are happening to see this technology advance and to do so, intelligently.
I have a question for Tucker. I'm in a similar position to you, but at a much lower scale. I'm just curious how, as one person for a whole city that has 12,000 signals, how do you manage the whole program? And how do you prioritize different projects and improvements? And yeah, thank you.
I cry sometimes, but it is difficult. It's more of like putting out what's burning today, right? I would love to spend my time focused on, we got a couple of two-way conversion projects coming up. Let me spend some time really digging into the studies and the reports and figuring out how to appropriately time those signals. Or there's a 500 signals out there that deserve a protected left turn coming across it. I would love to go in and dig into the crash reports of each of those signals and then find out which one's the worst and start from the top and work our way down, right, and appropriately time and program those signals. Honestly, it is a lot of putting out the fires. What's right in front of my nose today, and let's do that. I've been trying to get away from that because, as we know, it burns you out, and it's not a great method of actually working with that. And so what I have halfway underdeveloped right now, honestly, is a database of all of our signals, the age of all the signals, the volume through each of those signals, the crash history at each of those signals, and putting all that information into this master spreadsheet, right? And then from there being able to kind of tier out what's important and what needs to be addressed. And also comparing that too with our customer complaints as well, right? So I think last I checked, there's 460-some open cases for traffic signal improvements on the engineering side. And so cross-referencing that with all of our signals as well. If there's this one signal that has 30 reports, it's a pretty big highlight that I need to go take a look at it. Being able to leverage our consultant staff has been helpful too. as I mentioned, I have 30 reports to this one signal. I'm going to give it to them, be like, okay, this one's obvious, handle it. I'm going to take a look at these other capital projects. But it is a balancing act, right? You got to figure out who's coming down on you today because this capital project's falling behind, and you need to get signal times out the door versus this signal is legitimately unsafe. So we need to go address it today as well. I would love to chat with you afterwards and share strategies because it can be tough, right? It's kind of enjoyable too because I can see the effects of it in real time and enjoy making the city safer with it.
I also have a question for Tucker regarding the near-miss studies that certain cameras are capable of. Is that collecting data on bike-ped interactions with vehicles or just vehicle on vehicle?
Both.
Okay.
You want more elaboration? It is both, and it can pick up not just pedestrians and bicyclists in the crosswalk, but anywhere in the vicinity of the camera. Honestly, I haven't done too many of these studies yet, so I'm not too familiar with them. I was demoed a different product recently that uses LiDAR. I mean, he sees an even larger range of area than these cameras do, and what they do over time is kind of track where pedestrians are going and heat map it. So if we set one up at an intersection, the example that I was looking at was Georgia and Meridian. It can look halfway down the block too and see that there's a bunch of pedestrians crossing at this specific spot mid-block. And that gets picked up on that product as well. We don't have any of those products. I was demoed that. But it's an example of kind of where it's going.
I have one also for you with traffic lights. In like a local construction project where the signal might be altered for that construction phase, do those get a higher priority to correct once construction has ended? Or do those sometimes fall behind where a time might be different or extended because a lane is closed and then it starts to create a traffic jam?
I mean, ideally those have a high priority as well. Kind of falls into that capital project bucket. I don't know if you have a specific example, but we do also try to be proactive. And if say Keystone Bridge is going to close just south of Fall Creek Parkway, we want to be proactive of not having that left turn onto Keystone, right, and trying to add more times. We're not always able to get to it, but as I mentioned earlier, the ATMS network is very valuable in that. As I can sit back at my desk, know a project's coming up, schedule it up, change the pattern when they start construction.
The one in particular, so I live on Washington on the east side, and so it's closed one way over basically starting at Southeastern, and that's right where I'm at. And so the timing is in a way to where the one-way west has, I should say, the connecting streets into it that connect from the north to go south have equal lengths of time to turn onto Washington, but there's much less traffic onto those. And so what's happened is a lot of traffic going west on Washington is getting backed up, or people are treating it as a stop sign. And so they're just going through it, and it's a construction site. And then there's really blind crossings because of the contractors' barricades. But so the leg of Washington on the east side.
This is Washington and Southeastern, you said?
Yeah, Washington from Southeastern east until maybe State.
Oh, the whole stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll see it when I get back.
Our friends at Indigo do have a couple of consultants that we can leverage, but I'll go talk to Indigo and find out what we can do with that.
Yeah, it's in particular, it's kind of a whole mess where both ramps, the on and the off ramp to the highway on Washington over there, that gets congested, and then you have Southeastern where technically it's a red light, but if you're going east on Southeastern, you can't go on Washington, so you should be able just to slip onto Southeastern, but it treats it as a red, and so traffic gets backed up from Southeastern all the way west underneath the highway, because people are the red light is a red light.
Yeah,
It's
I know,
not
I know
a
what you're
blink.
talking about. I've been stuck in that before. I've tried to cross on my bike before. It's challenging, to say the least. And it doesn't help that the southbound on-ramp onto the interstate is closed, too.
If people wanted to advocate for this legislation, how would you recommend doing that effectively without agitating
Sure.
people who might vote on it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, the Roads and Transportation Committee is where you start. I mean, that group of members is who's going to have the most say in this, and then reiterating to the chairman as well, who, like I said, I mean, Chairman Pressel has shown an interest in use of technology to make streets safer. He allowed a hearing on my bill. We didn't do a vote, but he allowed a hearing, which is a nice sort of first step. So yeah, the Roads and Transportation Committee, it's not worth reaching out to everybody. It's really about that committee, the chair and vice chair, and saying that you really hope they would consider giving this a closer look, especially in light of all the extraordinary data we're getting out of the Safe Work Zones program.
We have time for one, maybe two questions. All right.
I want to say thank you for all you guys coming here tonight. I've got two questions. I think, Tucker, I think you mentioned it in your email with regards to it, but how are you using AI with regards to traffic control, and will that help with your job, with what you do?
Yeah, I like to say that LLMs will not help me. But the term AI is kind of broad and generic, right? I mean, each of the camera processors that I showed you uses an edge processing machine learning, right? That's a form of AI. And so they're, like I said, they're on the edge. They're local only. They don't go out to a data farm. And they learn the specific intersection on how to look at all of that. I have not seen an example of it. No one has proposed one before, but I would think that some sort of grid learning matrix type sort of system can kind of look at all the data inputs into a cloud, for example, downtown Indianapolis, and be able to optimize that the best. I have not seen an example of that. I don't know how easy it would be, but I would have thought that someone would take a look into that sort of application.
All right, thank you. And then the other question I have, none of you talked about it, but I see it all around the city, but these flock cameras that are all over, do those have anything to do with safety, or are they just for IMPD's use?
The only access that Indianapolis DPW has to flock cameras is I have a portal that sees volume of vehicles across the camera. That's all that we have access to. Everything else is on the IMPD side.
So they're not doing anything with license plate reading, or are they?
Well, they work by reading license plates, and they also work by reading the make and model of the vehicle that passes it. Outside of that, I really couldn't tell you because I don't know.
All right, thank you.
So I think I saw a hand up down here earlier. Yeah, okay.
Tucker, are there any jobs open in the city of Indianapolis?
Sure, while you mention it, we are hiring. There are a number of open positions, but the one that I am particularly interested in is we are hiring another signal engineer to work with me on all these 1,200 intersections that we have.
One last question? All right.
What's the biggest limitation to implementing physical technology over digital application, like speed bumps or roadblocks to crossing walks to ensure people's safety over cameras that'll give people fines after the fact?
Did you guess what the distinction was, or like how?
What's the biggest limitation in doing it? Not money. I know it's expensive.
I mean, I don't think money can be ignored though, because a traffic camera costs around one of my cameras costs around $30,000 to install. That's with all the contractor fees and everything. And a speed bump, if it's contracted out, is roughly that same price. So you might be shocked by that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I
would just add that, I mean, I think it's not an either or. I mean, you know, the way I've always been taught since my days on the city council is this is education, engineering, enforcement, right? That's kind of the three legs here that make this sort of work. So it's like a circular table, for what it's worth. Three legs wouldn't work on a regular table. But we need to do a better job of educating drivers to be safe, right? I was saying before we started, like sometimes I feel like we are home to some of the worst drivers around. And I used to be like driven by the policy side and then being a dad, and now I'm like sort of driven by rage. And so like I think there's the education piece is important, and we should be reviewing like what we're doing in terms of driver training and like ensuring that we're really drilling down on things that matter and all of that. And the engineering piece of it, a speed bump or how we narrow streets or protected bike lanes, all these things are good too. But I've come to believe that the absence of enforcement writ large is an enormous problem for our community. And I don't blame IMPD. Like there is the capacity is not there at present to do what we need to do. So the only solution is to utilize proven technology to fill that gap. And I think that that's an important thing for us to consider, because the behavioral side of this is a real problem. And people, I mean, it started in 2020, right? We saw a real spike in pedestrian fatalities and vehicle fatalities. And part of it was these roads were empty, so people started driving even crazier, and that's never stopped. In fact, in 2024, right, we saw increases while the national average was going down in terms of vehicle fatalities. So we have to start enforcing and changing behavior as the mechanism, because I think that is actually more important than the engineering right now in terms of how we narrow streets and all of that. So yeah, I mean, the question's a good one, but people need to, the old saying is you can't legislate people not to be jerks, is the word I'll use, because WFYI probably has like some FCC thing that would get him in a lot of trouble if I actually swore. But the fact is, like, we actually can, and I think enforcement is the mechanism by which we start to do that, at least more focused.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. These events are designed to bring together people and incite conversation. I think we had some great conversations around traffic safety today, so thank you. And especially thank you to Tucker, John, and Blake for the great content and thoughts. Appreciate you.